Skevich here of Daily Fantasy Winners. Week 11 of the NFL season is here. And for this video, I'm going to do what I did in my last video, and that's just give you my top plays at each position and then give you another favorite play of mine, whether he's under the radar or just a very good value play as well. So we'll do that for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and defense as well. And I actually have a bonus player for kicker as well, just because I think it's an interesting note that some people probably notice, but some may not have. So in any case, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But to start off, let's just jump right into quarterback. So quarterback was certainly difficult for a top play just because I think Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck, Tom Brady, and Marcus Mariota were all very much in play for the top quarterback play. Ben Roethlisberger's up there too, although it's supposed to be really windy in Cleveland, so I was, you probably had to downgrade him just a little bit there for that. But at the end of the day, I went with Andrew Luck actually as the top pick, and the main reason why is teams, in terms of run pass percentage wise, teams throw it on the Titans the most this season, and the Titans rush D's gone a little bit weaker over the last couple of weeks, but generally speaking, the Titans rush D's been pretty solid this year. And the Titans' pass defense has been atrocious. Teams love attacking them through the air. Obviously, the Colts are a very pass-heavy team. And so it fits right into the Indianapolis' hands for what they want to do. They're at home, projected to score quite a few points in this game. And then also, lastly, the Colts have their full collection of wide receivers and tight ends now. Dante Moncrief is back, playing a good amount of snaps again. And then also, of course, Dwayne Allen is back as well. Not doing as many pass routes just quite yet coming off the injury, but I'm expecting that'll continue to improve. And quite frankly, him and Jack Doyle coming in and out, makes perfect sense because the Colts do a lot of three wide receiver sets where they each take a turn on the field, basically. So, excuse me. So that's it for Andrew Luck, and then we'll move on to the second quarterback. And this is a guy that I've really been recommending since very early of 2015 season. If you've been following some of my my picks or videos or articles and things of that nature. But this is Tyrod Taylor. And running quarterbacks not named Cam Newton, I still think are being slightly underprojected. Just most places I look, or just people I talk to, places like just anybody. But this is especially true with Tyrod, though, I feel like. And the reasoning for this is since the Bills fired Greg Roman, they've been running actually a little bit more zone read. And that's particularly coming in the red zone. And, one of it, obviously, there's basically two reasons for this. One is just because, obviously, it's a new offensive coordinator. When you change offensive coordinators, play calling tendencies can change a little bit. But the second main reason also is that Sammy Watkins has obviously missed most of the year. And obviously, he played a little bit in the beginning of the year, and he's been missing. So, obviously, without by far your best pass catcher, you're going to tend to want to run it a little bit more. And a way to bring in some diversity, obviously, is to bring in a little bit more zone read. And I actually thought the Bills' play calling against Seattle, even though they didn't find a way to win, referees had a nice little hand in that one at the end of the first half. That was interesting. But in any case, the Bills, I thought the play calling offensively and the diversity that they're bringing with such limited playmakers on the outside was really well done by Buffalo in that game against Seattle. And it's something I've noticed with Buffalo really over the last couple of weeks. And so I think they're letting Tyrod run a little bit more. He has 4 touchdowns rushing in his last 8 games. So I think a projection of Tyrod for a half a touchdown a game rushing specifically is a perfectly legitimate estimate for him. And it's very good for a quarterback as well, of course. So and then the last note I'll just say on Tyrod is that and this is about the matchup, is that the Bengals defense just hasn't been very good this year. They've been pretty solid the last couple of years, but I didn't think there would be a huge drop off this year, but we pretty much have. They're 24th in yards per play allowed this year, and they're not even decent against the run or the pass. They're just pretty mediocre to bad in both versus the run and versus the pass. So good matchup. The line's been actually trending toward Buffalo this week, which I agree with. The line's now down to like 2.5 for Cincinnati, and so I actually think Buffalo is the slightly better team on a neutral field, speaking, and that's what this line now suggests, and I pretty much agree with that. So the line makes a lot more sense now to me. So Tyrod, somebody I think that could put up about 19 fantasy points. That's probably what I personally would project him at, but I'm certainly hopeful with the upside that he can get into the 20s perfectly fine as well. So and pretty good value as well on FanDuel and DraftKings. So let's move on to running back. Don't overthink this one. This is about as obvious as it gets, in my opinion. There are a few good running backs, like DeMarco Murray should be really good this week, obviously against a bad Colts rush D. But in any case, don't overthink this. This is Le'Veon Bell all the way. The Browns obviously have a horrific defense. The Steelers are big favorites, projected to score a lot of points. But the big kicker here is it is supposed to be very windy in Cleveland this weekend, and just it's supposed to be very windy this weekend across the entire Midwest. But it's going to be pretty bad in Cleveland, and the reason why I say that is if you've been to a game, in like you've been to a game at Cleveland Brown Stadium. Their stadium is pretty much right on Lake Erie. It is on the north side of downtown. It is not where Quicken Loans Arena or Progressive Field are, where the Indians and the Cavs play. So it's a game where you just don't get much protection at all from skyscrapers or whatever. It's right there on the lake, and it's not well protected. It's just as simple as that. So the gusts could be up to as much as like 35 miles an hour I've seen, and so that just means a lot of shorter passes at the end of the day, and that means Le'Veon Bell's. That's really good for him in terms of running the ball, and it's good for Le'Veon Bell in the short passing game because he lines up in the slot a very good amount right now, especially since the Steelers are missing not only Martavius Bryant to suspension, but they're missing Darius Hayward-Bay, and they're missing Marcus Wheaton as well, who are a little bit more their deep route guys. But in any case, Bell is therefore having to play wide receiver a lot more and do a lot more of the shorter stuff. So in any case, that's it for the top running back. And as far as the running back that's got pretty good value, CJ Prosise of the Seahawks, he is very cheap right now. The salary more reflects probably when Christine Michael was on the roster, and obviously Christine Michael was waived if you somehow didn't know that by now after seeing this video. But obviously Thomas Rawls is back, and Pete Carroll did say something in the media earlier today meaning Friday. I think it was Friday, maybe it was earlier today or yesterday, I can't remember. But Pete Carroll did say that he expects Rawls to be coming back aggressively and expecting great things out of him. At the end of the day, though, I still believe that looking at his wording, reading into some of the articles about it, I do not believe that Rawls will be the worst case. The best case scenario for Rawls is he's going to get half the snaps and half the carries in comparison to Prosise, and I think that's being really generous. I'm expecting personally more like 65-35 or 70-30 in favor of Prosise, but even if it is 50-50. Prosise is extremely cheap. Like he's $4,900 on FanDuel, and this is a fantastic matchup actually against Philly. The Seahawks are a touchdown favorite at home, and the Eagles are 24th in yards per rush allowed. Just how I was saying how the Titans are much better against the run as opposed to the pass. The Eagles are the exact opposite, much better versus the pass as opposed to the run. And so right here, I think it's a great matchup. You have a nice fallback just because Prosise is that cheap. And but in any case, I think he could also very easily be a 25 point fantasy guy this week easily. Just get a couple touchdowns on the ground, and he could easily have one of those 18-20 carry for 100-yard games, while Rawls gets 8 or 9 carries for 30 some yards or whatever it might be. So that's it for running back. So let's move on to wide receiver. Pretty much for all the same reasons I already said about Le'Veon Bell. Antonio Brown, in my opinion, is the best wide receiver. Several wide receivers are injured. Brown's defense is terrible. Brown's just going to run every route in the book for Ben, so I think it's pretty much that simple. Just moving on to the value play, and this guy actually might even be a little bit under the radar just because he has not had a very good year this year, mainly from the fantasy perspective. Been a little bit better on DraftKings just because he has still been catching an okay amount of balls. But Julian Edelman's the one guy I've got here listed, and there's several reasons for it. One is there's no Rob Gronkowski this week, which should be a nice boost for Julian Edelman targets. The second reason is the Patriots are big favorites, and they're projected for the most points of any team this week. But more importantly, the Patriots, they are not a team that just will, once they're up 14, 21 points with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, they're not just going to hand it to LeGarrette Blount 3 times and punt. They are going to continue to run their normal offense. So, and I think we all know this, and I think that's also even especially true when the Patriots are coming off a loss, which they are since they lost at home to Seattle in the final play of the game, or final series of the game, I'll say, at the goal line to Seattle. And so I think New England's very dangerous and going to play, New England's always dangerous coming off a loss. And the 49ers defense, they just continue to struggle. They're in just complete rebuild mode right now on defense, and there's just not many signs of improvement right now. So I think this is going to be a monstrous scoring day for New England, and Edelman certainly will be playing a role in that. I mean, he's like 6,100 on FanDuel. That's pretty crazy. I know he hasn't had the touchdowns, but he's still getting the receptions and targets, and so a big Edelman day is coming sooner or later, and this is pretty much the perfect opportunity for it. So moving on to tight end. Jordan Reed is my top pick at tight end. He's just the best tight end, available to choose from since Greg Olsen played Thursday night, and obviously we're dealing with this weekend's games, and then Gronk is out. He's out injured, so. Jordan Reed, he's going up against a weak Green Bay pass defense, and Green Bay has a pretty strong rush D as well. So I expect Washington to throw it quite a bit in this game, and obviously Jordan Reed is the main option for Kirk Cousins in that offense most of the time. So Jordan's the pick there, and then. As far as this guy's actually, I'm still a little surprised how little owned he's just not getting much ownership. And he was one of the best tight ends last year, and he was somebody I was certainly recommending from the beginning of 2015 season. That's Tyler Eifert. The main reason is, one, I think he's a little bit underpriced because I actually believe he is as good. He is as good as Gronk or Greg Olsen, and that's my personal belief. You may think that's crazy, but you have to understand, AJ Green is obviously the main weapon on Cincinnati, but Cincinnati really doesn't have like a main second option. I know you're thinking maybe Brandon LaFell, maybe Tyler Boyd, but when Eifert is in there, Eifert always draws the red zone targets with AJ Green. If you take a look at the red zone targets of AJ Green and Eifert last year and even starting again this year, they are drawing a bunch of red zone targets again. This is what they do. And it's extremely difficult to cover both of them because there's so many different ways you can use Eifert and AJ Green in terms of the routes that they run. Eifert lines up in the slot a lot of the time, or just as a wide receiver, split out wide. They just do all kinds of different things with Eifert. So Eifert's probably the best touchdown threat of any tight end. I would actually say that I'm not afraid to say. Yards is a little bit different in comparison to Olsen and Gronk. Gronk and Olsen probably a little bit better edge on the yards, but touchdown Eifert is as good as anybody, and Eifert will still get yards. I mean, the Bengals set up a trick play. It was kind of a trick play a little bit, or I'll just say a funky formation in the beginning of that Monday Night Football game against the Giants, and he got a 71-yard reception where he just ran right down the seam. So, in any case, Eifert's the pick there, and he just hasn't had much high ownership. So I would just play Eifert right now, because I just feel like his floor and ceiling's about as good as anybody. In any case, enough rambling on that. Defense. Yes, we're moving on to defense. This one was a really tough one to choose because of any week this year, this week probably has the most options at defense. A lot of different ways you could go here. I chose the Cardinals though, and the simple as this. They're number one in yards per play allowed this year. The Vikings offense is in complete shambles. They are very banged up on offense, and obviously, Patrick Peterson is very dangerous on special teams, as you guys all know this. So, even though I know the Cardinals are on the road, and I actually have seen that there is some sharp money on the Vikings in this game, which makes me a little tentative. I don't care, honestly. There is so much upside here to the Cardinals defense that I'm willing to do it, and there's such a high floor to them as well. I feel like the worst case scenario for the Cardinals here defense is about 4 or 5 fantasy points. Maybe they don't get a sack, or they get 1 sack, and maybe they do give up 2 touchdowns or something like that. Like that would be like the worst case scenario. But I think the upside, the Cardinals could get over 20 fantasy points on defense and special teams. I mean, I know it's asking a lot, but if that happened, it just really wouldn't be the most shocking thing to me in the world, I guess. So I'm just going to stick with the Cardinals on this and go against the struggling Vikings defense, or Vikings offense, excuse me. So, and then as far as the defense that's under the radar, going back to the Bills actually here on this one, this is by far the best sacks matchup of the weekend. The Bills have generated the most sacks of any team this year, and the Bengals have allowed the second most. This is about as good of a sacks matchup as you're going to find here. So I know the Bills are a slight underdog on the road, but still, it's going to be windy in the Midwest. or I mean, this game's in Cincinnati. I mean, it's still going to be windy there. You could get some Andy Dalton interceptions, things of that nature like that. And this is again more of a GPP thing probably for the Bills than I wouldn't use them in cash since they've got there's so many great options on defense. But GPP wise, the Bills, there's great upside here for from a sacks potential, and of course they could force some turnovers if Dalton makes a couple bad throws. So, and then actually I want to throw in the kicker bonus. So. And this is Sebastian Janikowski. And if you're just worried about Sunday contests, I'm sorry, this does not apply to you since this is a Monday night game. But anyways, the Raiders are 6-point favorites and should score quite a bit on the Texans. But the biggest point I want to make here is that not only is this game being played in Mexico City, the altitude in Mexico City is about 2,000 feet higher than it is in Denver. And obviously Denver has the highest altitude of any team in the NFL. And so since this is obviously we'll call it an exclusive game in Mexico City, should be warmer temperatures. You've got the altitude advantage, and it's basically the best kicking environment possible you can have. So if you're doing a daily fantasy and contest for that involved Monday contest, I would definitely go with Sebastian Jankowski. And also, if you're just playing in normal fantasy leagues and Sebastian is just on on free agency and you can pick him up, I would do that this week and use him because I'm in a couple different season-long leagues and Sebastian was available in a couple of them just because he's been a little bit, less accurate this year. And so, but I would go ahead and pick up Sebastian just at least for this week. I think it'd be worth it. So. That's all for the picks, though. So if you have any questions about any of the players that I've mentioned or just any players in general that are playing this weekend or another weekend down the road, don't hesitate to ask in the Daily Fantasy Winners forum on DailyFantasyWinners.com or tweet Daily Fantasy Winners, which is DFantasyWinners on Twitter. And then on Twitter, I'm also at Nick Yuskevich, just my first and last name combined. And then also the last thing is if you want to see more of the players that the Daily Fantasy crew likes in general, not just me, but Max and Danny as well, every Sunday just after lock, we post an article on the Daily that's called on our featured page on the main page on DailyFantasyWinners.com, as you can see, and it's called the Daily Fantasy Winners NFL Showdown. And so what we do here is Danny, Max, and we have a challenge where we play one lineup against each other each week with a fun, friendly wager on the side, basically. But we also add the accumulative points and how many first, seconds, and thirds we rack up throughout the season. And whoever has the best finish at the end of the year wins the end of the year prize, which we actually still have yet to exactly figure out what it's going to be. But even though I'm actually a little bit behind in it, Danny has the lead right now. Max is just behind him, and I'm just behind Max. We're only about 100 points away from the I'm only about 50 points off from Max and about 100 points off of Danny right now throughout the entire season. So it's very close. But even though I'm a little bit behind, there are plenty of weeks remaining, and a comeback is definitely coming. So thank you for watching, and thanks again, and good luck to everybody with their lineups this weekend.